The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Hi, I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am delighted today to introduce our guest, Erik Talkin, who's the CEO of the Santa Barbara County Foodbank. Erik, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Susan.
I cannot wait to have you share some of the incredible support that the Foodbank of Santa Barbara County provides throughout Santa Barbara County. It's incredible and immense and deep and broad. And so part of our show is to talk about the work that you do in support of that, but it's also an opportunity to talk about you as the leader and the individual behind that leadership. So with that in mind, I'd love to start at the very beginning and talk about where you were born and raised and brought up.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am an American citizen. I was a Navy brat, that my father was a submariner. I was born in New London in Connecticut on the submarine base there. And then when I was 4 years old, my father was posted to England. So I grew up in Old London, as it were. So I stayed there until I was in my later 30s. So it was a great opportunity for me to experience life in another country and really shaped a lot of things about me.
Do people say, I hear a little British accent back there?
They do now and again. So if I'm in England, people detect the American side, and if I'm here, then they detect the British side.
I love it, I love it. And do you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother and a sister, and they both went to American Forces schools when we were in England, so they're kind of a little more American than I am.
Is that right?
I went to an English all-boys school, so that made me who I am today, and so yeah, so it was a kind of a difference there.
And the all-boys school, was that kindergarten through, or our kindergarten through 12th grade?
It's what they call secondary school there, that you go there when you're about 7 years old.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it. And I understand that your father, having been in the Navy, somehow introduced you to cooking, kitchens, things like that. Is that right?
Very much so, yes. So I said that he served on submarines, and when you're in a submarine, you're stuck in this tiny, tiny space with people for often months on end, and food basically can be one of the kind of things that makes things really great or really awful. So they had to become expert at using kind of very basic items that they had and really being creative about what they're cooking and what they're doing. So I think that inspired him to be very interested in food and cooking, and then he passed on that interest to me.
That's fascinating, and I know we'll bring that back up again in terms of the work that you do with the food bank. Let's go back to when you graduated from school in England. And did you stay and go to college in England as well? Did you go back to the States? What did you study? What did you major in?
Well, I took a year off and came back to the States and worked here. I spent some time working in a telephone answering company, so that dates me. With a kind of a switchboard, and we would answer people's phones for them. This was even before people had voice tapes that would record messages. And then I went to college in England. I went to University College London and studied English literature, which prepares you for everything and nothing. And then I wrote some plays that were on the London Fringe there, and I started a production company with a friend. So we produced small TV films, we did a low-budget feature. So I was very interested in that side of things. And then I also started a company that produced medical educational films as well. So doing the two of those in tandem. Then in the late 90s, I came back to the States. My plan was to be a millionaire screenwriter. I'm still working on that one. And I moved to Santa Barbara. So nobody told me that you earn your millions and then you move to Santa Barbara. I came straight here. And have been here since 98.
I love that. And going back to your English lit major, I was also. So perhaps we were ready for everything and nothing together.
Definitely.
And so you thought perhaps you would focus in on production, whether it's be plays, movies, playwriting. And so did you do that when you came to Santa Barbara?
I did. I worked for a period of time. I had an agent and a manager in Hollywood and trying to get a big sale on a script. I sold a couple of what are called kind of a pilot, but I didn't actually get a major sale. So I needed to find other work. I had 3 young children at that point. So I became involved with the Granada Theater and the Santa Barbara Civic Light Opera at the time. So that gave me a real kind of experience of the theatrical world. And then I slowly got involved with another nonprofit, which was the Community Kitchen of Santa Barbara. So this was within the Casa Esperanza Homeless Shelter, which is now the Path Homeless Shelter. And I worked there as the executive director for 7 years. And that really gave me a kind of an insight into homeless people, the health problems that they face, and the differences that good food can make to people in that situation.
Yes.
So we were able at a certain point to get a lot of fresh produce from the food bank. And I noticed the difference in people's health literally by the color of their skin. People had a kind of grayish skin. And then after having plentiful vegetables for a period of time, their skin returned to their normal color. So things like that really encouraged me to want to find out how we could apply, good nutrition more broadly, and how we could get to people when they're very young and get them really healthy and able to look after themselves with food at a young age before they would get to a situation where they might be homeless or something might happen.
That makes a lot of sense. You really talk about and really believe in beyond food for people. It's really around nutrition for people, the education for youth, for nutrition for people. It's really a broad scale in terms of a spectrum of what you're wanting to do as you serve in Santa Barbara County at the food bank. And so how did you go from the previous 7 years to being the CEO of the food bank of Santa Barbara County?
So I had been, experienced at being one of our member agencies. So I led one of our member agencies. The food bank has 300 plus member agencies and programs around the county that get their food from the food bank. And so I, was interested and connected with the food bank. And then the previous executive director of the food bank called me up and said, I'm leaving to move on to another job. I really think that you would be a great person to do this job. So, I found out more about it, and it really connected with me in terms of this opportunity to work in education and work with kids. Because at that time, the food bank was doing no educational programs. And really also the food bank considered their job was just to get whatever food they could and give it to people. It didn't matter what the quality of that food was. So it was kind of a different time. This was 2008. And things have really changed significantly since then.
It sounds like it. We can talk arc, but we also can talk trajectory in terms of where it started and where it is now. You mentioned the 300 partner agencies, and so want to talk about that too. But let's start really with the basics of the food bank. I think people who don't know about the food bank might have a picture in their mind of what it might look like. It might look like to them a shelter. It might look like to them a warehouse. So maybe what you could do is shed some light on what it is and what it isn't in terms of physical basics and locations.
Absolutely. Yes, as you say, people have these perceptions of what the food bank might be. It might be like a pantry where people come there and get food. And people think it's just homeless people who come there. So those are kind of key preconceptions that we've had to work hard to clear up. So basically, the food bank is a very large distribution and storage machine. So we take food from all over the western United States, we bring it into this county along with food that we get in this county. Then we store it safely in refrigerated, freezer, and dry storage space at 2 warehouses. So we have a very large warehouse in Santa Maria on Foster Road there. And then we have another warehouse here in Santa Barbara, right next to the Page Youth Center in Goleta. So both of those warehouses serve as hubs where other nonprofit organizations come and they get food from us every day. And then it also serves as a base for us to run our own programs around the county.
Great, that's really helpful. And I know you have hundreds of volunteers that support the organization, but just in terms of staff, how many staff are supported through the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County?
So we have about 50 staff working with us at locations in North and South County. and then we have about 800 volunteers that they manage. So volunteerism is really key to everything that we do at the food bank. We do a lot of educational programs, and they're all taught by volunteers. We have volunteer truck drivers, etc. So we're able to multiply those 50 people, to a very large degree, and that makes all the difference.
And if a volunteer or a person right now is interested in volunteering with the food bank, how might they seek entry?
Well, we try and find out about what that person is interested in. Some people like to use their hands, some people like to use their head. I'm a head person, not a hands person. So we have volunteer coordinators in the North and the South County. You can find them on our website. And you can speak to that person and just explain a little bit about what draws you to the food bank. You can find out more about us and the opportunities that are available. And we really try and get a good fit and try out with something. And if that doesn't work, then maybe there's something else that's more appropriate. Mm-hmm. So this can be jobs or that just as a simple few hours a month, helping out in the warehouse, or a few hours a month teaching, or picking fruit through our Backyard Bounty program is another very popular volunteer activity.
So that is if you have a fruit tree or an avocado tree, which is a fruit tree, or other trees in your backyard, and you think, gosh, it's a bounty here. You could call the food bank and some volunteers might come and pick and take it back.
So, we've all driven down the street and seen trees where it's all lying on the ground, and we think, well, something should be done with that fruit.
Yes.
Well, the Backyard Bounty program run by the food bank is a way of utilizing that food. If you just have 1 or 2 trees, then we encourage you to bring the food to the food bank, or if it's difficult for you, to get a friend or a volunteer to do that. But if you have a significant number of trees that are too much for you and for your friends and family, then we encourage you to give us a call, and then, as you say, we can get volunteers to come and pick that.
That's great. Let's talk about a few other programs. I know there are many, but what are some of the other hallmark or signature programs that people might already know about, but just like this one that you described, might not yet know about?
Sure. Well, we start very much with our children's program. So we have an overall umbrella term that we call Feed the Future. It's about changing the future in Santa Barbara County, and we're really committing to creating what we call a food literate generation for the next generation of Santa Barbarans. So food literacy means the skills, the practical skills, to be able to plan what you're going to eat, to budget for that, to be able to shop very intelligently in a cheap way, and then to cook and to store. So they kind of sound like very mundane things, but actually, if you have those skills, it gives you a lot of power to be healthy through food. If you have a lot of money for food that week or not much money, you can still kind of maintain that level of health. So all of our programs are based around this idea of building this food literacy. And so the Feed the Future programs start at the very basic preschool level. So we have a program called FLIP, which is food literacy in preschool. And in that program, we get a volunteer to go into a low-income preschool with 1 produce item each time they go. And they introduce the kids to that produce item. They taste a recipe that they help to make with it. There's a story, there's a game, and then they bring some of the fruit home with them. So when they're at that preschool level, they're open to new tastes. Yes. But typically when kids have left preschool, they've made their decisions that sweet and salty are the only sensations in life that they want to explore going forward. So we really try and get them early. And then we have a sequential series of programs that follows on from that through grade school. We have programs like Kids Farmers Market, where we create a farmers market. The kids cook something with the food, because we've all experienced that children will eat a vegetable that they've created or cooked in some way. But if you put it on their plate, they're not going to do that. So there's programs like that, and then we have more detailed cooking programs like our Teens Love Cooking program, where we entrust teenagers with knives. We're brave and give them that trust. And they have like a cooking course over a number of years. And then they finish that with a fiesta where they cook a meal for their families. And the families are often overwhelmed by what they've been able to do. And things like this create changes within the family dynamic around food. Obviously, children don't have the power to decide within their family unit what food they get and how it's cooked. But getting these skills and bringing them in, we found that gradually, if you introduce it over a period of time, children can get more and more skills and more confident about making a change about what's happening within the family. Yeah. And the goal is that by the time they leave school, that they are food literate, and whether they go on to college or go on to work, that they don't just pop open, a tub of ramen noodles and call it good, but that they can really use food as the cheapest and most effective way of keeping healthy.
That's great. So that food literacy, as you said, can seem basic, but it's so important, and I would say even critical in terms of knowledge about food and finances, and how nutrition is such an important piece of who we are and as a healthy individual, but also community and society as well. It also, your story or your train of thinking around the food literacy and education in schools reminds me, going back to the beginning where you talked about your father in the kitchen and the submarine and doing a lot with what's there. And I think that's what you're trying to show the students, that you can do so much with little.
Very much so. I think, people spend a lot of time watching cooking shows, and, in the cooking shows they have a perfect kitchen, they have all the ingredients have been prepared, money is no object. And so people kind of get caught up in this dream world of, oh, that would be great, but I can't do that. My life is totally separate from that. Maybe I'll try a recipe and I don't have everything and it doesn't taste the same and I give up.
Right.
But what we try and do is focus on the realistic life. We live here in Santa Barbara County. We're lucky. We have all this wonderful produce around us. So what is here that we can work with?
That's right.
And how can we make that expensive? Because we all know that vegetables are expensive compared to other things, and we know that they go off. So we need a plan to use them before they, rot.
That's right.
So these are skills and challenges, but we really try and bring things down to a very practical thing and empower people to how can they move forward from where they are now.
Yeah, and something that you talked about, which is reality and practice and what's happening day to day, makes me think about the book that you recently published, Hunger into Health. And that's I'd love for you to describe what the concept is and why it is important. Also, I'd say this is really around people who are our neighbors, our friends, ourselves watching, can really identify with what you're about to share.
Yeah. Well, I think when I'd been working in the food bank a number of years, I really felt I wanted to shift things away from just purely a charitable focus, the idea of getting people to stand in a line, giving them food. And in a way, that can be a disempowering act. You're telling people that they can't manage things themselves, even though we know people face huge stresses with their ability to pay medical bills, transportation. So the people that we're serving at the food bank, they're typically working families. The number of homeless people we serve is like 4 or 5%. So typically these are families where there's at least one person in full-time employment, and they are struggling. They become food insecure towards the end of the month. They've spent all their money on the things that they need to be able to carry on with their job or to pay the rent. And so good, healthy food is always the thing that we can cut down on and they can save on. The trouble is that we found that this creates a kind of an unhealthy spiral, in that if you just begin to have unhealthier and healthier food, then you get less healthy and you get sicker and you're less able to work and then less able to earn money. So it creates a kind of a downward spiral. Whereas with food literacy, we're really concerned at getting that upward spiral.
So Hunger into Health, I understand in going through that book, that you decided to go a month, I think it was a month, was it? With using $6.32 a day to feed yourself. And so what does the magic number 632 represent?
Well, I'm not sure it's a magic number because that's the amount of money that a single person would get if they were on food stamps or what is called CalFresh here in California. So for me, that is just a way of understanding in a very, very small way what it is like to be one of the people in the community that we're working with. That is for a period of a month, and I just utilize that money, which would be the equivalent of what it would be getting, and then figure out how can I be healthy on that amount of money. Yeah. And it's a struggle. Towards the end, I've run out of money, and I'm subsisting on very little.
Very little.
But I don't hope to pretend that this is anything but a small sense of what it's like for other people.
Sure.
But food insecurity is a very serious issue. And unlike other issues, it kind of remains hidden.
Right.
So if there's a gang violence problem, then we see that play out on the streets in front of us. But food insecurity and this kind of month-on month after month lack of a high quality food for children, is invisible until later on in life, where really serious health conditions come and come knocking on your door.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we get in there early and work with people in a way that empowers them around being healthy themselves with food.
I like that you talk about making visible what is invisible oftentimes, and many times people make assumptions around Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara County, or they just don't know, or maybe they visited and understand that it's beautiful, which it is, but may not remember or know that it is the county that has the third highest percentage of families in poverty as compared to the other 57 counties in California. And so when you share that information with others, do you find that people are generally surprised, or do you find that people, nope, those that you serve and work with know that to be true?
I mean, everyone is surprised by that statistic. If I go to a conference and people look at my badge and it says Foodbank of Santa Barbara County, then they kind of, split their sides laughing. There can't possibly be any hungry people where you live compared to where my food bank is. But as you say, we have this incredible child poverty rate in this county.
Yes.
And some of it is to do with the high cost of living in this county, but nevertheless, that is the fact for many, many people. And what that means is 1 in 4 children in the county is living in poverty. So that's an unacceptable statistic that we can agree on. So our goal is really to change that situation in a way that is sustainable and that works through people, helping themselves, and not just saying we're going to solve this problem with more food.
Right.
Because my experience over the last few years has been that more food alone is not enough. People remain food insecure if you're just giving them endless food, but you need to give them food and then strategies for how they can look after themselves with food and plan around. And they can't do it all themselves, but they can do a lot themselves, and then we can do other things to help them. So it's a balance.
Yeah, and an education and information, really arming them with those tools. So you talked earlier about partners around the county. It's the Santa Barbara Food Bank of Santa Barbara County does so much, but you don't do it alone. You really do it with many help from a lot of not only volunteers, but I understand partner agencies as well. Can you share a little bit about who are some of those partner agencies with whom you serve?
Sure. So, the way that a food bank works is that, we run our own programs, but then we have this large number of agencies, which can range from a homeless shelter through a senior center, through a children's program. So a very, very wide group. People are used to larger charities like Catholic Charities or Salvation Army. So we have a lot of faith-based groups. About 60% of our member agencies are actually faith-based. And then a whole range of other shelters for domestic violence, a lot of senior centers. So I haven't really touched on our senior programs. That's another key area for us.
Sure.
We're all getting older, which is better than the alternative, but it is changing the population here. They talk about the gray tsunami, and the tsunami is breaking here as we speak. The number of senior citizens is growing, and a lot of those are on fixed income and really kind of struggle to be healthy with food. So it's kind of like the flip side of what the situation was with children. So we really have stepped in with a mixture again of education and food, because you forget. You forget the things that you needed to do. If you have less opportunity to cook, less will to cook, and also things change for your requirements as a senior to be healthy.
Right.
So we have a program called Brown Bag, which is our senior nutrition program, where we provide groceries and some education. And we're really looking to dramatically expand those services and looking to partner with others in the community.
That's great. Erik, everything that you've shared so far has really filled in for me, and I'm sure viewers, some of the color between the lines that we just didn't know about the food bank. So one other question, and it's really around that filling in the color, is around how food banks or our food bank is funded. Is there a lot of state funding, federal funding? Is it all local, or is it all contributed through individuals and organizations?
Well, there are two sets of resources that come into the food bank. The first is food. So we we spend about $500,000 purchasing food each year. So these are protein items that we can't get donated or other healthy items. And we get a lot of fresh produce. Over half of the 10 million pounds of food we distribute every year is fresh produce. A lot of that comes from donations, Santa Maria Valley, but then we also spend a lot of money purchasing produce from other parts of California. So these are seconds, which are kind of the uglier vegetables, which are perfectly good, and we bring a lot of that in. So that's a kind of a key way in which we operate.
Got it. And so looking forward, what are some of the things you're most excited about regarding the food bank and our community?
Well, one area that has been a key focus for us recently is disaster preparedness. That doesn't make me excited because I don't want to have a disaster, but
Right.
It's really an area that we've been working hard to dramatically develop, because the food bank is there to serve people in need, and in a major disaster, an earthquake, the number of people that we would need to serve would dramatically increase. So we've been working on a disaster feeding plan for the entire county. We've been bringing in partners such as Red Cross and Salvation Army to partner with us on that. So we're really developing a comprehensive feeding plan so that we're confident that we can be able to feed people. Because we saw during the Thomas disaster, even with one break
Right.
in the 101, it created chaos. And if there was a
Absolutely.
major earthquake with breaks all up and down the roads, then we would need to be able to store food here in Santa Barbara County to be able to distribute it out to people here. So we're facing a challenge at the moment that we have a very small warehouse in the South County. It's an old converted fire station. It doesn't even have loading docks. It's totally inappropriate for us. So we're actively looking at the moment for a new site that we can build a warehouse so that we're able to store enough food here in the county to be able to feed people for a week or so until other arrangements are possible with food coming in by air and sea.
Well, that is a very exciting, forward-leaning future for the food bank, for sure. And thank you for working on that in terms of supporting the community.
Sure.
We never know when a disaster may come again to Santa Barbara County, and it sounds like you're wanting to prepare not only yourself and others for that, but thinking about the facilities and the people and the food.
Yes, and we're also trying to kind of use the same approach that we use elsewhere, which is individual empowerment. So we've also created some disaster food boxes that contain a week's worth, just a small plastic tub that has a week's worth of freeze-dried food. It lasts 25 years, it's shelf life, you can just put it in your closet. If people can buy them from us on the website, and if you buy one, then we will donate another one to a low-income family so that we can build this type of resiliency across the county. I mean, people even found during the mud flow in Montecito that they were kind of stuck in their houses because if they left and went out of the cordon, they wouldn't be let back in again.
Yeah.
So people were actually subsisting on very little amounts of food.
Absolutely. Well, we have time for one last question, and I have a question about the future, and it has to go with it goes with your food, it goes with your writing, it goes with your past, so it comes together, which is you have a new book coming out. What is the book?
I'm very excited about that, yes. It's a picture book story for children. It's called The Hunger Monster. And it's about a girl who faces this struggle of food insecurity. Her family, the car breaks down and they have to spend all their money on getting the car fixed. And suddenly that month they're food insecure. And so this kind of imaginary creature, the hunger monster, follows this girl around. And we know, and you know, Susan, from your experience, that children in the classroom who are not, don't have proper nutrition, they find it really hard to study and focus. So this girl, has to kind of battle this hunger monster and find a way that she can help herself and help others to get out of that situation.
We're very excited. All of us are excited about when the book comes out, and we're also very, very thrilled and excited for you as a leader of the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County. And I want to take a moment again to thank you for not only your time here today, but for your leadership and your support of so many individuals and families throughout our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Local Leaders.